Hi, friends. This might be short. I don't know. Um, I didn't record or upload anything yesterday, and I thought maybe I wouldn't today either. Um, my kitty cat, the one that I have left, her name is Harmony, and she's not doing very well right now. I have calls into both healers that I work with to see if they can look and render her any assistance. Um, I can't take her to the vet. She's one that won't let you pick her up. She's not trusting enough. And she's older, so I don't know. She might be crossing. Her breathing's very labored and her throat is swollen. So it's a hard time for me. You know, it's an illusion and it's not. And walking the balance beam on that one can be a bit of a challenge. Um, so that's where I am. Now, since I'm there already anyway, and since I mentioned Priscilla and her death in a recent video, I guess I'll expand out on that a little bit and let you know why I accused no-see-ums of taking her out. Um, she was a very fine cat. I had her about 12 years, and she was Siamese, fixed, of course. And the shelter where I got her, she had been an outdoor cat until then. And I guess she was one of a litter, and the mama of the litter figured the kittens were old enough to go find their own space and was starting to attack them. So the lady brought Priscilla in and didn't even get her through the front door of the shelter before I claimed her. She was just so beautiful. And it was wonderful. All those years with her, it was wonderful. Priscilla was psychic in the way animals are, and she was very affectionate, and she just had a deep understanding. And if I would be hurting, she would come and be in my lap. She just knew. And yet she was kind of fat. Some cats get that way when you have them fixed. And anyway, so she couldn't stay in my lap too long because of the weight of her. And she somehow came to understand this. And so she would either lay half in and half out of my lap, or she would be sensitive to not staying too long. So anyway, she did like to go out now and again. And I tried to indulge that as much as I could. You know, meanwhile, we live in the woods and there's bugs and so I would get the stuff from the vet to put between their shoulder blades and so on and so on. So she would go out now and again. She didn't come home one night, and that hadn't ever happened before. And she didn't come home the next day, and I got some kind of an intuition that I wouldn't be seeing her again. I even picked up her dishes and things. And this is all very strange in a way because not too long before that, I lost my cat Sunshine when I had somebody working replacing a door on the house, and Sunshine was deaf, and so he wasn't, even though all my cats have their claws, he wasn't suited to be outside at all. And somehow I was in the back room, and the worker left the door open, went into the garage for something, and A couple of hours later, I was looking for Sunshine, couldn't find him. Anyway, I wandered the hills and the area looking for that cat, calling it. Well, you can't call a deaf cat, just crying, looking for him, knocking on doors, asking had anybody seen him, and so on. And it was, I only share this to show you how strangely different it was with Priscilla, that I didn't go out doing that. But anyway, uh, she showed up at the door. The next morning, she was there by the glass sliding door, and I let her in. And it was almost as if it wasn't my cat. There wasn't anything that was the same about her. And none of her habits, none of her ways. She just wasn't herself. And it scared me when I looked in her eyes, because who or what looked back out at me? It wasn't my cat. It was not Priscilla. And it was dark and it was malevolent. And I didn't like it one bit. And she was very sick. I didn't know that at the time. I was so stunned by the cat was possessed by something, you know. It was weird, and anybody could look in her eyes and just see it was spooky. And I felt at the time that my cat just wasn't there. Whatever this was, it wasn't Priscilla. And I guess I went through about 3 days of this, and then when she wouldn't eat or drink or anything, I had a friend take her to the vet for me. And that's, I guess, the thing I feel most guilty about, was that had she been taken sooner, she might still be with us. But she went to the vet. They said she was terribly, terribly infected with some pretty strange stuff. They had no idea how she'd gotten it. So she was hooked up to IVs and things. She had a really high temp and all that kind of thing. So she wound up being there 10 days and then dying. And it was hard on me. During this time, I spoke with my medical intuitive friend Ken and asked him to do what he could for her, and to see what he saw. And he was the one that shared with me. He said he didn't want to leave me with too many of the details so that I wouldn't have ugly images in my awareness associated with Priscilla. But he said that she had been attacked in the night by a being. You know, there's service to self and then there's service to others. And very much a service to self being that had it in for me and took it out on my cat. And for whatever reason, entities do what they do, God only knows. But it does have kind of a nice ending. I didn't have them dispose of her body. I had it brought home to me so that it could be buried here, and I could say a few words over her and, you know, have her close. Well, that turned out pretty good, because Ken said that um, she was hanging around her body a lot. She still hadn't adjusted to being out of it. What he said about Priscilla and looking into those eyes and seeing the evil staring back there, he said, well, Priscilla's there. She's just kind of cowering way deep inside. And so I had him, you know, render his services for her and help her out. And it made me feel really good that he could do that. He said when she got on the other side, she would spend a lot of her time sitting on top of her grave, not being fully aware that she'd crossed, being a little upset, and he was able to help her through some of that. Now, I know that there are a lot of people that are going to think that I have absolutely gone over the deep end here, but and that might be the case. I don't know. But this is my reality, folks, and I'm just sharing with you my understandings. The medical intuitive I use, his name is Ken Bentall, and he's very good. He's extraordinary in his ability to see and to interact with things and with life. And he's been a real blessing for my life. And I've worked with him over a year now, I guess, on a regular basis, helping me with this body of mine. And so, it's interesting. It just crossed my mind. I never asked him what happened to Sunshine because I got such a clear vision of it. I saw him being chased by a dog and meeting his end that way, and it was rather unpleasant. I just got disgusted with all the crying and searching and all that kind of stuff, and I kind of stomped my foot emotionally and demanded to know what had happened to my kitty. And I saw it as I lay down to go to sleep. I saw the thing play out. Anyway, okay, so where was I with Priscilla? She hangs around, she visits now and again. Uh, just like when we're released from the body, it's a great freedom for us. It's the same with the other creatures. There's a lot more freedom. My friend Art Fantasies, Christian, lost his beloved companion of many years, and you know, uh, Ken said that in that situation, his kitty has actually basically never left him and doesn't intend to. There's such a love relationship there. So things don't die. Um, that's a part of the lie that we've bought into for whatever reason. It's a part of the play here. Nothing dies. My mother crossed over in '07 on Christmas, and it's never given me any difficulty. I cried more over Sunshine than I did with my mom's passing. I had literally nothing to cry over. I took care of her in the last years of her elderly life. She was in her early 80s, mid 80s, and we had a hospice situation here. And it was the most amazing thing. It was very difficult. I really, my heart goes out to people that work hospice or that are the caretakers for people who are passing. Um, it's a major challenge for you and for them. But when mom passed, I knew it before the nurse called it. I knew it. They knew she would pass that day when the hospice person came. They can tell by a change in the breathing pattern when someone is close, and this is their work, and they just know. And so they said it'll be today, and they stayed. And so we got what part of the family we could to be near, but mom wasn't really with us at that point. She had been more or less unreachable uh, for some time. And but when she passed, I was there in the room, and all of a sudden I knew. And here's how I knew. All of a sudden, she embraced me. She was out of her body, and she was young, and she was joyful, and she was happy, and she was exuberant. And she embraced me with her gratitude and her energy to say, thank you so very much. Because, I've told you that my hobby for long years was near death studies. These people that cross over and come back and all seem to be telling so much the same story that you just have to listen and wonder, and they all read it in their own way. Some will say they see an angel, some will say they see Jesus or Buddha or a bright light or whatever. But if you step back from it a ways, you can see, um, at this point, I probably think they're just seeing their guides. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's the most loving, wonderful, embracing presence of light, and the judgment isn't a judgment at all, and all of these things that are so lifting. And so mom and I lived alone together. We both had a house, and a few years before she died, I just decided this is stupid. I'm living alone and she's living alone, and I broached it to her and she said sure. So I moved in with her, got rid of my house, and we had fun. We would have morning readings and prayers together, she in her own way and I in mine. But it doesn't matter your beliefs. It's easy enough to get along. And we did. And we found things that we could share. And I would read aloud to her. Sometimes she would read a chapter, but mostly I would be doing the reading. And I think we read Betty Eadie's, and I've forgotten the name of it. Is it Embraced by the Light? It's a favorite, but right now I can't call it to mind. And we watched Dannion Brinkley in his his humorous presentations on being struck by lightning multiple times, killed more than once by lightning. Amazing guy. Um, and so I shared so much of my understanding of that kind of thing with her. She was very Catholic all of her life. And so this wasn't a part of that understanding, but she knew that I loved it, and she was very indulgent and allowed me to go on. And so what happened when she died, when her body died and she stepped out of it, she came to me to say thank you. Oh my goodness, thank you. Uh, it's like you said. And she was very happy. I mean, she was very happy, and she shared that happiness with me. And so I was lifted. I mean, I was high as a kite. I was joyful for her. Uh, when it comes my time, if I don't take this body with me in the upliftment or the ascension, if it has to cross, I want there to be celebration. Passing is not a time for boo-hooing and mourning and all of this crap that's built on this false premise that there is such a thing as death. It doesn't exist. And yet we don't like to see suffering that sometimes precedes a death. Anyway, so the only other encounter I've had with my mother was a week or 10 days later. She did come for a quick visit just to say, I got the sense that she'd been in classes of some sort, and she just came to give a more steady, measured thank you, to say that so much of what you shared with me has turned out to be true, and I'm grateful. And so that was a wonderful thing. So I guess I've kind of cheered myself up here. Isn't that interesting? Um, I guess I'll post this. I mean, so often I think not, and yet, you know, 99% of the time it winds out up there. I'm just sharing what's happening with me right now. And even as I speak, my cat has very labored breathing. And it's hard to listen to. It really is. So, send up a prayer for Harmony. Send her some healing energy so that she'll be nurtured, so that whatever her path is, that'll be fine. Everything's always perfect, my friends, even in the midst of our deepest, darkest difficulties, even when we're just boo-hooing our eyes out. It's still possible to be aware that everything is always perfect. and to step back from the story a little bit and maybe not quite give it so much belief. That's the thing. It's okay to be in the story. That's not the problem. It's the deep belief that the way we think things are is the way they are, that there's a reality to them that is the sucker punch that we take, that we can step back from and get some distance. If we take everything that comes in heart, it's a much easier ride. Good day then. For me, it's an illusion, and it's not. And walking the balance beam on that one can be a bit of a challenge. So that's where I am. Now, since I'm there already anyway, and since I mentioned fixed, of course, and the shelter where I got her, she had been an outdoor cat until then, and I guess she was one of a litter, and the mama of the litter figured the kittens were old enough to go find their own space and was starting to attack them. So the lady brought Priscilla in and didn't even get her through the front door of the shelter before I claimed Priscilla and her death in a recent video. I guess I'll expand out on that a little bit and let you know why I accused no-see-ums of taking her out. Um, she was a very fine cat. I had her about 12 years, and she was Siamese. I have calls into both healers that I work with to see if they can look and render her any assistance. I can't take her to the vet. She's one that won't let you pick her up. She's not trusting enough. And she's older, so I don't know. She might be crossing. Her breathing's very labored and her throat is swollen, so it's a hard time. Yeah, hi, friends. This might be short. I don't know. I didn't record or upload anything yesterday, and I thought maybe I wouldn't today either. My kitty cat, the one that I have left, her name is Harmony, and she's not doing very well right now.